Hello everyone, this is Foxhound coming back again with another quick final review. What is considered to be now the best assault carrier. And this came because this carrier, yes, which is right now the CM Project 1143E, came in this event over here, right? The Jade Storm. So we got this carrier over here for 30, around 30 pounds, 35 I think it was. And at the same time, we got this bomber that just dropped in the game. I did a review about this bomber first, then I played with it. And I gave my initial observations. This bomber is like KBX, but with more durability. Which in my opinion makes it what I will say. I mean, if I did a tier list of bombers, it will be possibly in the SS tier because I mean KBX is considered one of the best. This is a better KBX. That's pretty much it. Because it's very consistent. So a lot of people, I mean me included, of course, we were thinking about at the end of the day, is this carrier considered to be on par, let's put it this way, in contrast to what is considered the best carrier or even assault carrier in the game, which is, for example, the Enterprise, yes, which is over here, or if it is even at the same level of Charles de Gaulle. So as you can see, I have the three of them. I have used I mean, most recently Charles de Gaulle extensively with two Su-39s extensively to rank up. But now we have this thing going on over here, and at the same time we have the Enterprise with this new bomber, which makes it even more consistent in my opinion. Okay, now the comments that I'm going to provide, I don't. How can I put it in words? This carrier that just came right now that is available gives or opens a lot of areas, let's put it this way, that requires weeks or even months to explore. Okay? So we cannot say 100% is something better or worse. Rather, I want to give you like an opinion between CN Project 1143E, Enterprise, and of course Charles de Gaulle. I did a poll recently before I started doing this review, and I made some videos using builds. And in the poll I said, okay, did you skip this carrier, or are you using Enterprise, or are you using Charles de Gaulle, or any other carriers? Most of people, like around 50% of you, said that you are using Enterprise at the moment and you skip this one. 20% said they bought the CM Project 1143E. The rest of you, 10% is using Charles de Gaulle, and the remaining is using other type of assault carriers in the game. Assault carriers like Pang, Tianjin, or Ghost Commander. Okay, let me tell you my thoughts about this. Why is it so complicated for me to give an absolute, is it good or bad? Okay, first of all, based on the statistics and everything else, this thing has two strike fighters. Okay, this thing has two strike fighters, so a lot of people say, oh, is it better, is it equal to Charles de Gaulle? The answer is very, very tricky. Yes, of course, the Charles de Gaulle technically is slightly, no, I mean, not, I mean, it's hard to say like, no, like, slightly, like, not like completely good or better than this. Of course, this strike fighter cannot be compared with Su-39. Obviously, the Su-39 is better than this, but this is a fairly good strike fighter. It does what you need to do. But the reason why I cannot say 100% absolute that the Charles de Gaulle is better than this is because this opens an area that has not been explored before, the carrier itself. So what is happening with this carrier? First of all, you have two missiles that you can use in order to either put HQ-26 to control the air more, and of course at the same time you have this missile that you can hit from distance, and if you master the use of this strike fighter, if you don't hit your missiles with the strike fighter, you are going to hit with this. So the combination of these two things can make you do close damage to Su-39, maybe slightly less. But the reason why it's difficult for me to say, for example, this is worse than Charles de Gaulle, is that this thing has autocannons that can also target air, so that's already two air defenses right there. It has autocannons, which Charles de Gaulle does not have, and you can equip this with any type of autocannons to even give you more air defense, for example, like Six Sigma, or to make you, for example, invulnerable or to not to tackle submarines pretty much, using Palek or in this case AFGS. One of my main complaints that I had recently is that they didn't give an upgrade to, for example, Pang or Tianjin. They don't have autocannons. That's very annoying. Something else. Because of that, you also have a pair of 6 air defenses as well. So a total of 6 air defenses plus the 2 cannons. That's 8, with the potential to be 12 if you use this. Okay, so you have better defensive capability than the Charles de Gaulle. Of course, you have only one helicopter. Yeah, but of course, Charles de Gaulle, if someone gets close, you can use the 3 helicopters to defend yourself, and yeah, most likely, I mean, if it's only one, most likely they're going to win, and you have 2 planes to deal with it. However, the difference between this and Charles de Gaulle is very, very simple. Okay, this thing, only statistics, has the highest speed and the highest maneuverability of all the assault carriers and carriers in the game. Yes, so, and because of that, it gives you options that are hard, that have not been explored before. Let's put it this way, have not been explored before. This thing gives you the flexibility to be with your team. Yeah, I am not saying that you are going to be in front attacking people, no. But what I'm saying is that if you park your assault carrier next to your allies, when they receive attacks from missiles, you will be able to also defend them. So that, on top of that, let's put it this way, when we go into the, let's see, the consumables of this one, let's go into the ship. It's not showing the consumables. It allows you to use this particular thing over here. Okay, if we go to ammunition and we go to advanced consumables, it allows you to use this thing over here. So this booster allows this carrier to reach around 26 to 28 knots. That's insane. That's very, very quick, allowing you to move around the map. Let's put it this way, to move around the map. Okay, so what this carrier, let's put it this way, is offering you is that you can do slightly less damage than Charles de Gaulle. Of course, Charles de Gaulle, how can I put it in words? Its main damage is going to be from planes, and you are going to pretty much control the air. That is an absolute. At the same time, however, this carrier gives you the option, yeah, so you have the option to get to your allies and protect them from submarines or from air attacks. So it gives you the option. So that's why it's hard to say. And another reason why it's hard for me to say that Charles de Gaulle is an absolute best is because obviously, grace granted, I have been using Charles de Gaulle, yeah, on battles as well. And there were times when I was facing a CN Project 113E. Of course, the Charles de Gaulle is better, but because this was giving the enemy more flexibility, let's put it this way, I didn't feel a huge amount of advantage. Let's put it this way. Of course, it depends on the team. So the trick here over here is that in order to use this carrier, you need to implement strategies in order to somehow protect the team after you kill one or two ships. I think that's the difference. Once two ships from the enemy are gone, then you can afford to go in front and start supporting your team. And that way they will not die to the carrier because you're helping them. And as well, you're putting yourself in the line to absorb some damage from other ships as well. Plus, this thing can move very quickly. Positioning, yeah, you can position very quickly with this. Okay, so this carrier gives you the flexibility. Okay, gives you the flexibility. Going to be quite a long video. Okay, this is 11 minutes. So again, with same armament, that's something that I like about this carrier. Now let's go to the Charles de Gaulle. Okay, Charles de Gaulle. Maybe I'm not. Okay, I'm going to start with what everyone has before I go to Charles de Gaulle because based on the pool, right? You're going to say Foxhound. What about the Enterprise? Okay, what about the Enterprise? Okay, so bear in mind the Enterprise has the same, almost the same amount of defenses, yes, as Project. It has 6 air defenses. The difference is here you have 5 autocannons. You can put this to target planes as well, and you will have 11 air defenses. However, you put this into the other one, you will have more air defenses. Or you can target submarines, okay, with Palecor FGS. So technically, both of them are almost close regarding its coverage, right? Defenses. Recently, I have not been using an assault carrier, let's put it this way. And the reason was very simple. When I transitioned to a Charles de Gaulle, let's put it this way, I just found it. First of all, I didn't put money into getting an exclusive bomber. Okay, so there were 2 other bombers that came before that I have not obtained. Both of them are considered to be the S tier. One of them can use guided missiles, the other one is very quick. However, I did get this bomber, and this is what made my opinion change a little bit. So this bomber is considered almost as a KBX. Yes, so what's the difference between the two of them? Is very simple. Durability. Durability. This thing has 9,000 more hit points, yes, than the KBX. And KBX was considered one, if not the best bomber in the game. So that makes this, in my opinion, one of the best, if not the best bomber in the game. Okay, based on durability. Okay, this bomber costs, if we put over here, it's available right now, 31 pounds, which is almost as equal as the carrier, this carrier over here. Okay, I got it, and of course we all know what's the gameplay with Enterprise. Enterprise is the type of, is an assault carrier, is in a different position as a carrier because it is slower. But you are paying, yeah, you're paying the price in a way that, yes, I am going to be more slow. However, I have more helicopters before anything else to defend myself. I have, on top of that, a drone and a bomber. So I have more aviation, one more aviation, yeah, in order to do damage. Of course, everyone thinks Enterprise is considered amongst the Charles de Gaulle one of the best. One of the best. Before we had this new carrier, I would have said that Charles de Gaulle was I mean, I had my opinion. I said that Charles de Gaulle, to some extent, was better than the Enterprise. Why is that, Foxhound? Because I used to compare damage, and I found out that I was the bomber. It's amazing, but you can do around 3 to 400 damage, assuming that you don't babysit it too much. Okay, so that's as much damage as you can get from this bomber. The bombers, however, this one has been able to put the damage more consistently, sometimes even higher. This bomber arriving into the game made me consider that the Enterprise is one of the best right now. Yeah, the best right now. Is it better than the CN project? Is not an absolute. Let me explain. The tactics are different. When you use an Enterprise, you use the heavy amount of planes that you have at your position in order to do as much damage as possible at the beginning and middle of the match to give your team advantage, let's put it this way. Yeah, so you're going to try to kill ships as quickly as possible. Once you run out of reserves, let's put it this way, from your drone and your bomber, by then you already should be winning. Yep. However, if you are not able to pull that off, then you are going to put your team on a disadvantage, because you will only have, yeah, the strike fighter in order to do the damage. Of course, technically, you should also be able to protect your team better having a fighter with you. Yeah, so that's the thing. But there is something very important, and maybe that I didn't mention it before. Positioning, mobility. This is considered one of the. I mean, of course, we have Pang and Tianjin and Ghost Commander, but those are gacha ships or special ships. But most importantly, this one is considered to be one of the fastest assault carriers, aside from the ones that I just mentioned. Allows you to position yourself quickly, okay? So no huge problem about that. However, we all know, yeah, there is no hiding to this, that people are using something very simple over here. Yep, something people are using this wonderful thing over here, which is free, available for everyone. The INS 5S, this anti-ballistic submarine, especially with this. Yeah. For an Enterprise, it is more difficult to evade those, depending, of course, there are a lot of circumstances, the map and we're positioning, all these things. But in general, for an Enterprise, it's harder for you to hide from anti-ballistic missiles. It's harder. Is that such a big of an issue? No. But I just have to be realistic as well. There are going to be situations, when you are going to face legendary players. And I have seen, I call it this, the triumvirate of the team, the winning team. 3 legendary players. One that has any type of assault carrier. Most of the time is going to be the Nemesis, yeah, so they cover the air. One that is going to be the Lyndon, which is the best destroyer with a busted air defense, so they have that. And guess what is going to be the third thing? This ranked submarine with anti-ballistic missiles, which its main purpose is to target the carrier. So if you have a legendary player with that submarine, your chances of dying against anti-ballistic missiles are extremely high. This is when a ship such as the Project can stand a chance, at least not to die so quickly. Yeah, at least a chance. Yeah, allows you to at least position fast. So between this and the Enterprise, I will say it depends on how important positioning is for you and how important a bomber is for you. How important a bomber is for you. The Enterprise has more planes, and you can do damage more quickly, and if you make mistakes, that's okay, because you always feel that you have planes available for you. The other one has less planes, but it gives you the flexibility to position and to support the team. Okay? Final one, of course, we have the feared Charles de Gaulle. Charles de Gaulle, okay? So, and I have used this with ages. When someone see me with a Charles de Gaulle with two Su-39s, people will say you are cheating almost, because it's insane what you can do with a Charles de Gaulle and two Su-39s. If you already have a Charles de Gaulle, you may not need to buy, and you are used to play with the Charles de Gaulle. You may not need at all to buy this. You don't. Really, truly you don't. I think Charles de Gaulle is slightly better, and but not for the reasons, because I believe, sadly, yeah, this ship could be on par, or sometimes in some situations better than Charles de Gaulle with a skilled player. But this carrier requires a lot of things. Requires skill, requires a decision making, requires to think more, let's put it this way, and you could potentially outmatch a Charles de Gaulle. I have been outmatched by this ship using a Charles de Gaulle. That's what I'm saying. Okay. However, most people out there, they're just going to say, oh, this missile does not work. It's because they are not using this properly. Most people are going to hear other comments from other people saying, oh, this ship is not as good as Enterprise or whatever. Okay? And Charles de Gaulle is very simple. It has two planes. If you put two Su-39s over here, it is more straightforward to do damage. That simple as that. It's more consistent. Yeah, it's more consistent. This one gives you more variability, more flexibility, but more risk. Whereas Charles de Gaulle is simply consistent. It does one thing, which is to target planes, to use your two Su-39s, and you can pretty much control the air and destroy everyone pretty much. What's the caveat about that? Well, simple as that, as I said. 10% of people from the ones that I voted on my pool own a Charles de Gaulle. If you don't own a Charles de Gaulle and you don't have two Su-39s, yeah, for example, you own something else and you want to put, for example, let's say you can use any other type of strike fighters, right? But this thing shines with two Su-39s. That's just the way that it is. And this carrier requires you to have two strike fighters that are able to take out other planes. Because if you don't have that, you are going to fall at the mercy of an assault carrier such as Enterprise. Yes, Enterprise has a fighter. If you use a Charles de Gaulle against an Enterprise and you are not using an Su-39, and if you are not using a strike fighter that is able to take out planes, then you are going to be in trouble because you cannot protect your team from air attacks. Okay, so you are putting yourself in a disadvantage. So Charles de Gaulle requires you to have resources, requires you to have very good strike fighters such as Su-39 in order to be the best, let's put it this way. Yeah? So if you don't have two Su-39, let's say you have one Su-39, well, you can then use this because you only are covering yourself with one, right? Or any other type of strike fighter that you prefer. This thing can take out planes. So it gives you the option to control the air with this strike fighter over here. Right? However, again, as I mentioned, yeah, the Charles de Gaulle depends on which planes you are using. If you have two very good planes, but sometimes that's the tricky part about this. Most planes that are able to take out other planes don't do as good damage as dedicated planes that take out ships. That's just the way that it is. The only exception to the rule again is Su-39. Yeah, that is why it's very, very, very tricky. That's why, for example, I will not recommend using, for example, two Harriers, for example, for Charles de Gaulle, because you will not be able to protect your team against the other carrier and planes. Okay. So that is pretty much, again, this was a very detailed video. You should see today I have three gameplays, not three gameplays, sorry, two gameplays, one with Enterprise and one with the project, and then you are going to see that even the plan itself is different. You are going to see that with project the battle will last longer, but you will be with your team more. Of course, you run the risk that your team simply die, and there are other factors. However, the Enterprise, which I think everyone has, yeah, of course, you will be able, if you are skilled enough, of course, you will be able to kill more ships, and you have a lot of reserves in order to command the air. What is my final verdict at the end of the day? Well, if you have Charles de Gaulle, keep it, you don't need to get anything else, right? I guess you should just wait for an Su-39 if you have a Charles de Gaulle. I'm not saying not to get this. That depends entirely on you. I am a assault carrier and carrier player. I like to have multiple assault. That's just my gameplay, and I like to have the option to say, okay, if there are a lot of people with the anti-ballistic missiles, I will use this. Simple. I like carriers. Yeah. If you have a Charles de Gaulle, most likely you do like them, and if you have two Su-39s, you are not even watching this anyways because you have the resources to have such an amazing loadout anyways. So I by now I think you already got it anyways. You already got this. But if you haven't, do you need it? I will say no. It depends if you have two Su-39s or wait for another good strike fighter to come. I think it's going to be very, very, very long time until we get a SS tier strike fighter and two of them on top of that. So Charles de Gaulle is kind of, yeah, comes a little bit ahead, just a little bit ahead, but it's more expensive. So it is a more expensive carrier. It is gacha and requires extremely good strike fighters. Project only requires one. It has already another strike fighter that is as good, kind of, but it gives you the flexibility to do more in the battlefield, and it's not going to be as expensive as doing a good loadout in comparison to a Charles de Gaulle. And finally, of course, we have Enterprise. Everyone has an Enterprise. Enterprise gives you the flexibility, not on mobility, but it gives you the flexibility on the type of strike fighters that you use. You don't need to have an Su-39 in an Enterprise in order to be amazing. You can use the Flogger, you can use the Harrier. It is not restricting you to use a plane to take out other planes because you have a fighter. It's easier for you to be more consistent and opening the map. It allows you to do more damage because you have two aviation. Yeah. So it's more consistent on that matter. The only thing that you have to worry is to position yourself. Yeah, to be not to die at the beginning, to pretty much put yourself in and position yourself and make sure that you kill. So what's my final verdict? Enterprise, it's kind of the best because it allows players to not force, well, between this one and the carrier. This one allows you to have more flexibility on doing damage because you can use multiple planes, and not all these planes need to be the best and most expensive. They can just come from the battle pass and you can be okay. However, the bomber for me is a big deal. That's why I used a Charles de Gaulle, because your heart of damage comes from the bomber and strike fighter. if you don't have a good bomber, you are going to be behind. So I will recommend at least try to get yourselves a jackknife or a KBX. Let's see how much they are on the market. If I put these bombers, let's put it this way over here, KBX 1.6, and that's why they're expensive because they're considered the best, right? Where is Jackknife? Jackknife is over here. 1, 2. Okay. So these two, you need to have at least these two. Is mandatory. The rest you can use whatever. You can still manage to use an Enterprise with another strike fighter from the battle pass is no problem. Yeah. Could we say the same from the project? I think kind of we can. The project also gives you one very good fighter as well. I think it demands you slightly more for you to have good air defenses, but I think Enterprise and CN Project are kind of equal. Of course, they are different. One is assault carrier, different tactics, but both of them are kind of on the same regarding the budget. Let's put it this way. If you are the type of player that always have thought that you want to have a Charles de Gaulle and you can't because it has not come, then I would recommend to get this and try it out. Try it out. I think it's worth it. And of course, finally, Charles de Gaulle is considered one of the best, but it's more expensive to build. So if you don't have a Charles de Gaulle, you can just use this. Just get the project and you are good to go. Because you don't have to spend as much money. You just need one good strike fighter and you are golden. You are good to go. I use this with the flogger and performs as good. No problem at all. I could do almost as equal as a Charles de Gaulle. Almost. Of course, not like completely. But again, I told you this carrier shines not because the strike fighters are amazing, but you can give more to the team. Once you take out 2 ships, you can go in front and try to protect your team. But it's more complex. This requires more strategy. Absolutely. More strategy. And of course, as the game progresses, it's going to be more difficult to land with these missiles. Although they are average, I think, as missiles progress, we have not seen like something increased durability of 200 or anything. So I think it is good on that matter. Anyways, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I know it has been very long, a lot of talking doing from my side. But I really want you to make the best decision because again, at the end of the day, if you are someone that has an enterprise and you're thinking to get the SCN project, you have to decide you get this bomber or you get the project or you get both. At the end of the day, you decide. But let me know in the comments what you guys think. I hope this was useful. I think I will release this video today. So tomorrow there will be 2 videos when I'm using an enterprise and I'm using the CN project. And of course I have a tons of videos with Charles de Gaulle. So I think my final advice is just enjoy the game. I will say that for the free-to-play community, let's put it this way, right? I think, and actually that's something else to consider, the free-to-play community, right? So from the free-to-play community, I do believe if you have not been around on the game, there are several items that we got for free, yeah, that are very good. Very Phoenix we got over here. We got Palek. We have 2 air defenses that you can get from ranked, but an assault carrier is going to require to have a good drone, a good bomber, and a good strike fighter. So you need to kind of invest a little bit in order to get these items, which you can get from the battle pass. However, seeing this one over here, the CN, let me see. This one over here already comes with everything that you need, kind of. The only thing that you need is to have one good strike fighter. So, to some extent, this is cheaper because you need to have less items. And of course, depends on what you have at the end of the day. Well, that is it for me. I hope that you enjoy my this final thought process. Leave me comments what you guys think. If you are still around, thank you for watching. Remember to leave a comment, like, and subscribe. Always open to hear your opinion. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Please tell your thoughts, but give your rationale behind it. Aside of that, thank you very much for watching. This is Foxhound signing off. Have a good weekend, everyone.